Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Southern Center for Human Rights 29th Annual Frederick Douglass Award Dinner. It's truly wonderful to see this room filled with so many friends, supporters, and champions of justice. Tonight, we're here to celebrate incredible leadership at a time when leadership could not be more important. We will be honoring Kristen Clarke, former Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, whose work has made prisons and jails across the country safer and more humane. We'll also pay tribute to Don Verrilli, former Solicitor General of the United States, who has done a few things since that time. And we'll also hear from our very own Tara Kaganzi, the Executive Director of the Southern Center. It has been such an honor to serve as board chair of this organization, one that I've been proud to stand with for nearly 2 decades. Every day, I'm inspired by what Southern Center does. This legal team does not merely litigate cases. They fight for freedom, for fairness, and for dignity of every person too often forgotten by the system. SCHR takes on wrongful convictions, stands up for people who are jailed simply because they're poor, and challenges systems that put punishment before humanity. And Southern Center's attorneys and staff do so with courage, compassion, and an unwavering belief in justice. At a time when inequity feels wider than ever, Southern Center reminds us what it truly means to serve, to see the inherent worth and dignity of people apart from their current circumstances. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize some very special guests who've joined us this evening. Judges and former judges, the Honorable Russell Kanan, the Honorable Todd Edelman, the Honorable Gerald Fisher, the Honorable Paul Friedman, the Honorable Carolyn Lerner, the Honorable Beverly Martin, board member, the Honorable Stephen Milliken, the Honorable Robert Morin, and the Honorable Frederick Weisberg. We're also thrilled to have several past Frederick Douglass Award honorees with us. Arnold and Porter, David DeBruin, Henderson Hill, the Public Defender Service, Cliff Sloan, and Virginia Sloan. And a special welcome to Avis Buchanan, along with our former board members, Maureen Del Duca, Jim Garland, Dave DeBruin, Betsy Biden, Catherine Huffman, and once again, Virginia Sloan. It's wonderful to have you back with us. To my fellow board members, thank you for your dedication and partnership. And to the SCHR leadership and staff, your commitment powers everything we do. Our heartfelt thank you as well to the event team and our sponsors who made tonight possible. This evening is not just a celebration. It's a reminder of the progress we've made and the work still ahead. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce someone who embodies the spirit of leadership and justice that defines the Southern Center for Human Rights. The board of directors proudly voted to elect her as our new board chair, and we couldn't be more excited about what her leadership will bring to this next chapter. Michelle Drake is an executive shareholder at Berger Montague, where she founded and leads the firm's Minneapolis office. She's a nationally recognized attorney whose work has achieved billions in verdicts and settlements for consumers as she battles some of the most powerful corporations in the world. Michelle's journey began in Atlanta as a public defender, standing up for people facing impossible odds, including those on death row. That early experience continues to guide her deep commitment to fairness and to fighting for those without a voice. She's been recognized time and again as one of the nation's top lawyers and continues to lead groundbreaking work in customer protection, consumer protection, privacy, and civil rights. We're incredibly fortunate to have her stepping into this role and guiding us rather than me, through tonight's program. Please join me in welcoming our new board chair and tonight's MC, Michelle Drake.
Thank you, Alan. It has truly been a privilege to see you, Alan, lead this board. Your steady leadership, your passion for justice, and your deep commitment to this organization, which you have demonstrated through countless hours, working alongside the Southern Center's lawyers on pivotal cases, including the Southern Center's ongoing litigation against the Fulton County Jail, have made a lasting impact on both the Southern Center and the lives of its clients. You have led with grace, heart, and conviction. You are precisely the kind of champion the Southern Center needs. On behalf of the board and the entire Southern Center family, I am about to present you with the crystal gavel that is a symbol of the power that lawyers hold, as well as the strength and fragility of our justice system. I'm also going to warn you that the gavel is not attached to the platform on which it will be presented. But as I present that gavel, if you could all please join me in thanking Alan with a well-deserved round of applause. It feels surreal to me to be standing here in this position. I worked at the Southern Center for Human Rights when I was in law school, and I consulted with the lawyers at the Southern Center for Human Rights during the entire time that I worked as a public defender in Atlanta and at the Georgia Capitol Defender's Office. And I believe to this day that it was the lawyers at the Southern Center for Human Rights who actually taught me how to be a lawyer. I could not be more honored to be in this position, and I am deeply grateful to all of you for supporting the Southern Center for Human Rights. When I look around this room and see so many beautiful and familiar faces, I see the Southern Center's past, and I also see the Southern Center's future. Tonight, we celebrate the legacy of the Southern Center and its deep roots in the struggle for equality and dignity. We heed the words and the legacy of Frederick Douglass tonight, who taught us that if there is no struggle, there is no progress. We also celebrate the Southern Center's future and the commitment of the people in this room to ensuring the endurance of the very simple idea that every person, no matter their circumstance, deserves dignity and equality under the Constitution. That is what the Southern Center for Human Rights stands for. Every single day, our attorneys, our advocates, our staff fight for people who have no one else to fight for them. Men and women whose lives have been shaped by poverty, by systemic inequity, and by a justice system that too often does not live up to its name. Before we dive into this evening's program, I want to take a moment to recognize the generous partners who make nights like this possible. All of you, your support helps fuel the work of the Southern Center, work that reaches courtrooms, communities, and countless lives across the South. So with deep gratitude, I'd like to thank the sponsors for tonight's program. First, our Founders Circle sponsor, Munger, Tolles & Olson. Our Catalyst of Change sponsors, Maureen Del Duca, Susan and Jeffrey Sussman, and Jake Sussman and Jessica Flaxman, and the law firm of Jenner and Block. Our Justice Vanguard sponsors, King and Spalding, Morrison and Forrester, and Perkins Coie. And our Pillar of Justice sponsors, Covington and Burling, the Feminist Forever Fund, Kilpatrick, Mary Broderick, Mary Schlegel, David DeBruin and Elizabeth Taylor, James and Mary Kate Garland, Lawrence and Jennifer Zimmerman, John Meyerhoff and Linnell Srochi Meyerhoff, and Mayor Brown. And I want to thank all of the other sponsors who I didn't name up here tonight, but whose names are listed in your program. Tonight, as we honor the work of the Southern Center, we also take a moment to remember and celebrate someone whose life embodied that fight for justice and dignity, Ronald J. Tabak. Ron was a true giant in the legal community, a champion for fairness, equality, and the value of every human life. As special counsel at Skadden, he built one of the most impactful pro bono programs in the country, ensuring that thousands of lawyers used their skills to provide service and serve those who couldn't afford representation. He dedicated his life to opposing the death penalty and fighting for those who society too often forgot, including helping free people wrongfully convicted and ensuring that intellectual disability would be recognized as a bar to execution. Through his leadership, mentorship, and relentless advocacy, Ron changed not only laws, but also lives. And his influence continues to ripple through the Southern Center and every attorney who carries forward his belief that justice must belong to everyone. To honor his memory tonight, I'd like to invite Patrick Mulvaney to join me on the stage to share a special tribute for Ron and one story from his lasting legacy of justice. Patrick.
Good evening. We wanted to spend a moment tonight honoring Ron Tabak. He was a longtime friend of the Southern Center for Human Rights, and he passed away in July. As Michelle said, Ron was a national leader on death penalty issues and pro bono representation. He was brilliant and passionate and courageous, and he cared very deeply about the people he served. It would be impossible to do justice to Ron's life and work in just a few minutes here, but what I want to do is just highlight one piece of Ron's life that has special meaning for the Southern Center family, and that is Ron's incredible 40-year commitment to Johnny Gates. Johnny was convicted of murder and sentenced to death in Columbus, Georgia in 1977. And in the 1980s, Steve Bright and others were recruiting attorneys from all over to come and represent people pro bono, people who were facing execution in southern states. So Ron Tabak, who was an attorney in New York, took on Johnny Gates' case pro bono, along with George Kendall and later Gary Parker and others. And Ron and the team could tell from the beginning that there were serious problems with Johnny Gates' case. They believed that Johnny was wrongfully convicted, and they did everything they could to fight Johnny's conviction and death sentence. Ron Tabak fought for Johnny Gates through the 1980s. He fought for Johnny Gates all through the 1990s. In 2003, somehow, Ron and the team succeeded in getting Johnny's death sentence vacated. So after 26 years, Johnny was removed from death row, and he was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, in the years that followed that, there wasn't much happening on the case, but Ron was still there for Johnny, and he still believed in Johnny. Ron and Johnny stayed in good touch in those years, and Ron continued to support Johnny every way he could. And many years passed with Johnny serving this sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. By 2018, Johnny Gates had spent 41 years in prison. Ron Tabak was still in his corner. They were still in good touch. And that year, 2018, was when new DNA testing showed that Johnny Gates was not the person who committed the crime for which he had been convicted and sentenced to death. Now, at this point, Ron was no longer Johnny's counsel of record, but he was still Johnny's biggest supporter. On May 15th, 2020, Johnny, who would have been executed in the 1980s, if not for Ron Tabak, was released from prison. 43 years, 26 of them on death row. And this was incredible news, but it also presented a new challenge. Johnny had been in prison for 43 years. All of his immediate family members, tragically, had passed away while he was in prison. And he was walking out of prison at the height of the COVID pandemic. It was May of 2020. It would be a massive understatement to say that this was a challenge from a reentry perspective. But Ron Tabak was still there for Johnny. As Johnny found an apartment and got on his feet, Ron continued to support him in every way he could. This was 40 years after he took on that pro bono case. Ron's level of commitment was truly extraordinary. Johnny Gates has now been free for 5 years, and he was not able to travel here tonight, but he wanted to share his own tribute to Ron, and so we'll play that now.
I got to know Ron when he first called me on the phone, let me know he was my attorney, and he said, I can only make 2 promises to you. Promise to give you my best and do my best. I can't make no other promise. And I told him that was the first time a lawyer ever said anything to me like that. And it meant more to me than any other words that were said. And that the lawyers in the past didn't do anything but help the state. And I didn't trust lawyers. But at that moment, I trusted Ron. I never met him, but I trusted him because of those 2 words. He kept his promise. And all through the years, you know, he was there for me, fighting for me. He always made a promise that he would always be there for me. He told me, he said, you're no longer my client, my friend. He said, I had love for you, and I told him I had love for him. And Ron stood to his word, to his last, bro. And I love him, and I miss him. And I always think about it every day. And I would never stop thinking about him because he was more than a lawyer. He was my friend. He was the man I looked up to. He was the light in all the darkness that I was going through ahead of my life. He was that light that I can always see and depend on. And he got me through so many things. There were times I wanted to give up. Ron always told me, that ain't what your mother wants. Do what your mom wants. I kept fighting. I miss him and I love him.
Thank you to Ron for standing up for Johnny and for setting such an incredible example for all of us.
Thank you, Patrick. Stories like Johnny's remind us exactly why Ron Tabak dedicated his life to this fight and why the Southern Center continues it every day. Ron's legacy lives on, and every person who walks free, and every wrongful conviction overturned, and in every act of courage taken in the name of justice. His compassion didn't just change one life, it helped change the system itself. That's the heart of the Southern Center's mission, to stand with those who've been forgotten, to confront injustice head on, and to never stop fighting until every human being is treated with dignity and fairness. Ron's life reminds us that real change happens when courage meets compassion, when people use their gifts to stand up for others. And that's what the Southern Center does every day. In the past year alone, SCHR has helped reunite families torn apart by unjust sentencing, fought for those held in inhumane prison conditions, and won landmark victories that are reshaping how justice is delivered in the Deep South. Each case represents not just a legal battle, but a life restored, a reminder that hope once sparked cannot be easily extinguished. And now we move to a very special part of tonight's program, the presentation of our first honoree of the evening, Don Verrilli. To help us present this honor, we are pleased to have with us one of the nation's most respected legal minds, Seth Waxman. Mr. Waxman served as Solicitor General of the United States from 1997 to 2001 and is universally recognized as one of the country's premier Supreme Court and appellate advocates. Beyond the courtroom, he's known for his thoughtful approach to some of the most complex legal and public policy issues of our time, from constitutional questions to intellectual property and regulatory challenges. The Hill once wrote, "There is no more respected lawyer in Washington," and that says it all. Please join me in welcoming Seth Waxman.
Wow, that was pretty cool. I just wish somebody in my family were here to have heard that. I want to express my appreciation to the Southern Center. I am old enough to say, and have been working with Steve and what is now called the Southern Center longer than this event took place. And I'm as excited as most people affiliated with the Southern Center are that next year, amazingly, is going to be the 50th anniversary of this incredible institution. I am on a plane tomorrow at 6 a.m. to go to Oklahoma, and my wife had major surgery yesterday. The only way that I could be here tonight, really just about the only person that I would want to be here tonight to do this for, is the person that I'm introducing, Don Verrilli. It is an honor and a personal joy for me to be introducing Don. Not that Don needs any introduction to this crowd, but Don has been a role model for pro bono lawyers across the country for, Don, you're not as old as me, but you're getting there, 2 generations. I was driving to my office this morning and I had my mixtape on and it was playing the Dire Straits song, Brothers in Arms. There may not be many people here other than Don who will remember that song, but it's sort of a plaintive, thoughtful song about people who served in battle and looking back many, many years at the struggles they did together and the bond that caused between them. And for me, I consider Don Verrilli to be my brother in arms. We have supported each other since the 1980s in cases involving capital defense, civil rights, election integrity, and now constitutional abuses by this so-called administration. In the Supreme Court, Don has advocated for principles of effective defense in Wiggins versus Smith and Montego versus Louisiana. As Solicitor General, he amazingly defended the Constitution of the Affordable Care Act, which has made such a difference in the lives of so many people in this country. He successfully defended marriage equality. The list could go on. I will also say that it really struck me that Don and Kristen are being given this recognition tonight, because the two of them stood up for the valiant defense of one of the most effective pieces of legislation our country ever enacted to support equal rights and equal participation, Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. We don't always win our cases, but we are on the right side, and we still are on the right side on the Section 5 issue, and we want to honor people who did the right thing. You know, Don has said, I don't know, for decades, that he thinks it's appropriate for lawyers in private practice to donate 10% of all of their client hours to pro bono matters. I know that he routinely provides at least 200 hours a year in pro bono client services. He's been deservedly recognized for his pro bono civil rights capital work many times, but the most significant one was by this organization, in which he received this very same award in 2006. So far as I know, and I checked with Terica this afternoon to make sure I wasn't totally off base, Don Verrilli is the only lawyer in the United States who has now won this award twice. And so I want to again express my appreciation for being able to stand up for my friend, my role model, and my brother in arms. And I hope that this award will serve not only as a just recognition, but also an inspiration for the very formidable challenges that we all confront right now. Thank you.
Sit down, sit down, sit down, please, 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 please. Wow, well, you know, Seth, my brother in arms, that's exactly how I feel about you. I have looked up to you and honored everything that you have done for this country for so long, and it's just an extraordinary honor for me to have you introduce me tonight. So thank you so much for that. I want to extend some other thanks too here. You know, I've got a lot of wonderful colleagues from my firm, Munger Tolles, who are here, many of whom have traveled from the West Coast, and I just want you to know how much it means to me that you're here. My former and longtime firm, and firm that I love, Jenner & Block, is also here in force, and I'm really grateful to be able to share this evening with you. And I want to extend my congratulations to our co-honoree tonight, Kristen Clarke, who's done such extraordinary work, and you'll hear a huge amount about it later, to protect the rights of the most vulnerable in our society, and there could not be a more worthy honoree. So as Seth mentioned, this is actually the second time I've been up here and being honored with the Frederick Douglass Award. And I guess what that means is that I'm old. You know, the first time was about 20 years ago, and it was based on the work I had done on the Wiggins case. Back then, the award was a paper certificate that was in a frame that you could buy at Target, you know, one of those frames. And that was really meaningful to me in its way. The physical object itself said something really important about the Southern Center, that no pretense, no frills. The only thing that matters is the unceasing pursuit of justice for the center's clients. Tonight, of course, things are a bit more sophisticated, but I don't mean that in a bad way. Quite the opposite. The Southern Center has come a long way in the last couple of decades. It is stronger, its reach is greater, its future is more secure, and none of that has happened by accident. Powerful leadership brought the Southern Center to where it is today. Leadership from board chairs Maureen Del Duca and James Clarke and Alan Garrett, who had the vision to see what the center could become. Leadership from executive directors Sarah Tatanchi and now Tarika Ganzi, who actually inspired that vision and have worked so tirelessly and brilliantly to bring it to fruition. And what's most important to me about their leadership is that at the same time that they have brought all of this strength to the Southern Center, they have preserved 100% of the spirit and sense of mission that has always defined what the Southern Center is all about. Now, that spirit and sense of mission has inspired me from my very first days, almost 40 years ago, working alongside Southern Center lawyers. I have seen up close what complete devotion to a client looks like. I have seen what tenacity in the face of a hostile legal system looks like. I have seen brilliant advocacy. I have seen real courage. I have seen what it looks like to insist that those in power respect the essential dignity of every person on this earth, no matter what they are accused of having done. I have seen resilience in the face of brutal losses and deep disappointments. And in all of these ways, and so much more, working with the Southern Center has taught me the essence of what it means to be a lawyer. So it's all the more humbling that you would choose to honor somebody like me who cannot come close to measuring up to what you do day in and day out. Now, the center's work has always been important, but it's especially important now. And the reason I think is especially important now is because that work is a model for all of us in the legal profession. These are dark times for our profession, dark times for our country. Those who want to oppress our basic human rights and to subvert our democracy and to subvert the rule of law are getting bolder by the day. And there's no reason to think that things are going to get better anytime soon. But really, if you think about it, the challenges that we all face now are just a larger version of the challenges that the Southern Center lawyers have always faced. So what I'm trying to do right now is to live up to the Southern Center's example. That has become my North Star. It is not the easiest thing I've ever done, but it is nothing compared to the strength and courage that the Southern Center's lawyers show every day. And I'll say one thing that I understand now that I don't think I ever understood before is that the Southern Center's lawyers have taught me not just what being a lawyer really requires, but what being a patriot really requires. And so while I'm so grateful for this honor, the truth is that I'm not really doing anything more than all of us should be doing right now, and that many of you in this room are doing right now. I know that every person in this room knows what is at stake. I know that every one of you is committed in your heart to the fight to save our democracy, to save the rule of law, and to preserve a government that at least aspires to justice and fairness, however much it falls short in practice. You wouldn't be here supporting the Southern Center if you didn't feel that way. But I also know that people are afraid. I feel a fear. Everyone at my law firm has felt that fear. It can feel like there's a lot at risk, and that feeling is understandable. You know, a lot of collective soul searching occurred at my firm and at every other law firm that ultimately chose to fight the president's executive orders. And I know that soul searching went on at law firms that have chosen so far to stay on the sidelines. And I understand the impulse to lay low and hope for better days, or to just fight at the margins, be low key, try to avoid too much attention, and hope that things get better. That's perfectly natural. I don't think it's complicity. But, and forgive me for being blunt about saying this, that approach comes with a cost. And it's a cost that Frederick Douglass saw all too well in his time. And here's what he said: "Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you will have the exact measure of the injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them." So I hope those words of Frederick Douglass take hold in the souls of everyone here tonight. For decades and decades, the Southern Center has shown us all what it means to refuse to quietly submit. So as new acts of oppression are visited upon us, as injustices intensify and multiply, I hope all of us resolve that we will not quietly submit, that we cannot quietly submit, that we will fight oppression, and that we will fight injustice. That is what the Southern Center has always done. It has always been a light in the darkness. And there is so much more justice in our country today because the Southern Center never quietly submits. So it's time now for all of us, in whatever way we can, to follow that example and to try to inspire our friends and our colleagues to do the same. Because if we decide, all of us together, that we will not quietly submit, we can stop this. We can stop the forces of oppression. We can. And so we must. And so thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. Thank you again for this great honor to the Southern Center. It means so much to me. And thank you.
We are now going to proceed with the second part of our program and with our second honoree of the evening. And to help me with the presentation of tonight's second honoree, please join me in welcoming Roger Fairfax. Dean Fairfax is the Dean of the Howard University School of Law, and he will be presenting the Frederick Douglass Award to this year's honoree, Kristen Clarke.
Good evening. It is wonderful to be here with you at the Southern Center for Human Rights and the 29th Annual Frederick Douglass Awards dinner. As was mentioned, my name is Roger Fairfax, and I have the privilege of serving as Dean of the Howard University School of Law. And yes, thank you. And I am thrilled to be here to introduce one of the recipients of the Frederick Douglass Award, my dear, dear friend of over 30 years, Kristen Clarke. Now, her brilliance, her brilliance and tenacity are matched only by her kindness and compassion. And I was about to describe her as a daughter of immigrants, but I have had the privilege of sitting next to her beautiful, extraordinary mother, Ms. Clarke, here. And I want us to acknowledge and recognize Ms. Clarke. Thank you. Kristen rose from the Brooklyn public housing to distinguish herself at Harvard College and Columbia Law School, and then launched into an extraordinary career devoted to civil rights. She served as a trial attorney in the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice as part of the Attorney General's Honors Program. She worked for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, helping to lead LDF's voting rights and election law work and presenting oral argument to the Federal District Court in Shelby County, Alabama versus Holder. She led the Civil Rights Bureau of the New York State Office of the Attorney General, where she targeted employment and housing discrimination, police misconduct, and racial profiling, among other wrongs. And she served as president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law, where she led that organization's fight for civil rights and racial justice. And following her nomination by President Joe Biden as Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, she was confirmed by the United States Senate on the first anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. By any measure, Kristen had an extraordinary 3.5-year tenure as our nation's leading civil rights enforcer. She protected individuals against discrimination on grounds of race, national origin, sex, disability, religion, and military status. She enforced the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the Fair Housing Act of 1968. She was a warrior against the hate that took precious lives in a supermarket in Buffalo, a Walmart in El Paso, the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, and Mother Bethel Church in Charleston. She was a leading advocate of policing reform, prison and jail reform, and was a fierce protector of voting rights. And I am proud to say that since leaving the Justice Department in January of this year, Kristen has been with us at the Howard University School of Law, where she now serves as the Earl C. and Anna H. Brody Chair in Civil Rights and directs our Civil Rights Clinic, teaching the next generation of civil rights champions at Howard in the tradition of Charles Hamilton Houston and William Henry Hastie and Robert Carter and Spotswood Robinson and Pauli Murray and Wiley Branton and Dovey Johnson Roundtree. And in these challenging times, I often think about Justice Thurgood Marshall, Howard Law School class of 1933. And had this Frederick Douglass Award existed during his lifetime, he certainly would have received it. Don, maybe even twice as well, right? And indeed, Justice Marshall did it all in his storied career. He was a civil rights attorney, he, of course, was at LDF, he engaged in government service. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like someone we're honoring tonight? Just like our honoree tonight, Marshall's influence on the fight for justice was omnipresent. Indeed, Marshall was so ubiquitous that when they had no more words to describe him, they simply called him Mr. Civil Rights. Well, Southern Center for Human Rights and friends, please rise to your feet if you're able and join me in saluting a trailblazer, a freedom fighter, a human rights champion, a defender of the rule of law, and an acolyte for justice, Madam Civil Rights, the incomparable Kristen Clarke.
Good evening. Thank you, Dean Fairfax, for that exceptionally warm introduction. It's such a privilege to get to partner with you right now, working to train up the next generation of fierce civil rights lawyers and advocates. And thank you to the Southern Center for Human Rights, to board members, to supporters and staff for standing on the front lines seeking justice for those entangled in our nation's spiraling justice system. I want to also recognize Tarika Ganzi for leading with courage and compassion during these turbulent times. And it is humbling to be honored tonight alongside the great Don Verrilli. Nelson Mandela said, "No one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails. A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones." Those words grounded me during my time at the helm of the Civil Rights Division at the Justice Department, where we brought renewed focus and attention on the need to confront the unconstitutional conditions that we see inside our jails and prisons. At every opportunity, we use the Civil Rights of Institutionalized Persons Act, the ADA, and other laws to address the immoral and inhumane conditions that we see too often: solitary confinement, failure to provide access to health care and mental health treatment, poor physical conditions, staff on inmate violence, rampant sexual abuse, severe staffing shortages, and more. It can be tough uncovering what's happening behind the windowless concrete walls of jails and prisons, and it's why I credit Tarika and the Southern Center for Human Rights for shining a light on the things that are broken and for pushing us all to respect the dignity and humanity of all people, including those who are incarcerated. The Southern Center's voice was especially loud when it came to the Fulton County Jail in Georgia and the Georgia State Prison System. And at the Justice Department, we heard you. In 2021, the Justice Department launched a federal investigation into both systems. Both investigations yielded a horrid picture of violence, deaths, assaults, and more. One of my final acts as head of the Civil Rights Division was the finalization of a consent decree concerning the Fulton County Jail, submitted to the court on January 6th and signed by the judge on January 12th of this year. This was no easy feat. This was the result of hard work from folks like Mo Klugman and others across the Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office. This work matters. These are life and death issues that we're talking about. We remember LaShawn Thompson, who died from severe neglect after being eaten alive by bedbugs in Fulton County Jail. Just 35 years old, his arrest for a misdemeanor and inability to post $2,500 bail amounted to what one Southern Center staff member aptly described as a death sentence. Dr. King was held in this jail after being arrested for joining a student-led sit-in in Atlanta, and he observed that what wears on him the most is the dread monotony. The Georgia State Prison System was just as grim. Georgia has the fourth highest state prison system in the country, with about 50,000 people caged. The Justice Department's investigation revealed horrific and inhumane conditions. People assaulted, stabbed, raped, and killed, or left to languish inside facilities that were woefully understaffed. Inmates were maimed and tortured, relegated to an existence of fear, filth, and not so benign neglect. These dangerous conditions not only harm people, it places prison employees and the community at risk. And I know that groups like the Southern Center will continue to beat the drum for justice until Georgia addresses a crisis that has now been laid bare for the public. We also investigated Parchman Prison, Mississippi's oldest and largest prison, located on the grounds of a former plantation where enslaved people were once forced to labor. Our investigation revealed that Parchman's prolonged use of restrictive housing or solitary confinement was unconstitutional, the very first time that the Justice Department had rendered such a finding. We found that people were locked in dark cells with no lights or working toilets. Temperatures climbed over 100 degrees, one time reaching 145. Parchman violated inmates' Eighth Amendment rights by creating a violent and unsafe environment and failed to provide adequate mental health care or suicide prevention measures. We also opened investigations into women's prisons from California to New Jersey to address sexual abuse. We investigated private prisons like Truesdale Turner in Tennessee and confronted juvenile detention facilities in places like Texas where kids were subjected to prolonged isolation, sexual abuse, and excessive force. And just as important as it is to pursue reform, it's also critical that bad actors, officials who violate the law, be held criminally accountable. During my time at the Justice Department, we didn't hesitate to prosecute those working in jails and prisons who defied their oath and violated their positions of trust. That work included prosecution of a jail official who sexually assaulted 9 female inmates while he served as a nurse in an Oregon facility. We prosecuted a prison chaplain who abused his position of trust and sexually assaulted a woman who came to him for spiritual counseling. Racially motivated violence inside jails and prisons is also rampant. In one case, we prosecuted officials in an Oklahoma jail for facilitating a white supremacist attack on a black inmate. I provide this harrowing picture because we know that these problems have not disappeared overnight. And so we must ask, where is justice now? The Justice Department's abdication of its duty and responsibility to safeguard our civil rights is shameful and indefensible. The events of the last 9 months make clear that the Southern Center's work is needed now more than ever. Many lawsuits have been dropped or investigations closed. An executive order barring new contracts for federal private prisons rescinded. New immigration detention facilities are being erected with names like Alligator Alcatraz, Cornhusker Clink, and Deportation Depot. Further complicating the picture across the country, we're seeing public officials being detained and arrested for exercising their First Amendment rights. Militarization and targeting of cities led by black mayors, the capitulation of law firms, corporations, and colleges fearful of standing up for the rule of law. Civil rights advocates know that they don't have the luxury of being able to sit back and wait for the clock to run on the grave threats we all face today. Civil rights advocates are resisting threats to the rule of law with fearlessness and determination. And they're doing so in a way that honors the legacy of those who fought for a better America before us. Great Americans like Frederick Douglass and Constance Baker Motley and Thurgood Marshall and Dr. Martin Luther King. I dare say that all of these Americans would be alarmed and astonished at the state of our justice system and the America we find ourselves in today, one in which we are witnessing the resurrection of Jim Crow. You know, there is a voice that I hear often. When they sent me to Rikers Island when I was 16, it was like hell on earth. I smile and I joke a lot, but deep down, I'm a mess. I'm 21, and on the inside, I feel like I'm 40. Those are the haunting words of Khalif Browder, who died by suicide just 10 years ago after being held without trial for allegedly stealing a backpack, placed in solitary confinement for over 700 days. Khalif should be alive today. I'm grateful for those who have gathered here this evening to celebrate an organization carrying out necessary work, righteous work, and work that matters now more than ever. But more is required of all of us in this moment. I'm humbled and thankful to receive this year's Frederick Douglass Award, and I accept it as a charge to stand alongside the Southern Center in finding new ways to fight back, to resist, and to preserve democracy. When we don't see justice, we stand up ourselves to fill the breach. We vote at every level, including in local elections and sheriff's races that matter so much when it comes to how our jails and prisons are run. And we lift up the voices of the marginalized to ensure that their sobering and tragic stories are not forgotten and inspire us to act with the courage, conviction, and urgency that this moment demands. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Fairfax, and Kristen, congratulations on a well-deserved award, and thank you so much for your powerful remarks tonight. That question, where is justice, is one that's asked by thousands of people in prisons and jails throughout the American South. And one answer to that question comes in the form of the Southern Center for Human Rights Executive Director, Tarek Aganzi. She brings justice to the Southern Center, and she is with us tonight, and I am pleased to introduce her this evening and for her to make some remarks tonight. So, Tarek, please join us.
I feel like I've been in tears since Johnny Gates' video earlier this evening. It has been such a moving evening already, and thank you all for being here to be a part of this evening's celebration. I really, really love a truth teller. And so I thank you, Don Verrilli and Professor Clarke, for telling the truth tonight, for telling it with conviction and telling it with passion, but also for living it day by day. So thank you and congratulations again. Before I begin my remarks, I would like to recognize our board members, our current board members who are here. We already recognized some of our former board members who are here. Will you please wave your hands or stand? Because these folks have our backs. I want you to see who they are, because their job is to stand up for us, and they do it with so much heart. And I want you to see our staff, the Southern Center staff. They don't usually like to stand up because they try to do all the humble stuff. But please, will you please let people see who you are? Thank you. These are the folks who are in the trenches, in the deep, in the dirty, dirty South. They are moving and they're shaking and they're loving and they're caring. And I am so, so proud to be a part, to be a friend, to be a colleague with this amazing, amazing group of human beings. I don't know if you heard my song. I had a song. Did you play it? There we go.
Like leaves on the Mississippi River. Black leaves in the Mississippi fire. Black leaves in the Mississippi choir. Black leaves on the Mississippi land. And we've got garden
Music is therapy for me. When I need encouragement, I sometimes turn to music that touches my spirit and soothes my soul. Kirby's the name of that artist. Black Leaves is one of those songs, and I love that song because I love that she sings about my home state of Mississippi with the pride in the black women who demonstrated courage and strength through death and destruction, through dehumanization and disregard. But it's this part that gets me every time. We got strength like towers. We got hope and power. And so I want to start there tonight. Because when it seems like the world and the institutions that we have known are crumbling right before our eyes, when cruelty and heartache and pain stand the risk of becoming the new normal, when it appears that all hope is lost, and just when it feels like the only thing left to do is to throw up our hands in defeat, we must remember who we are. We are brilliant. We are creative. We are compassionate. And as Dunn said, there's a whole lot of risk, but we are worth the risk. We have strength like towers. We have hope and power. The criminal legal system is ground zero in the cruelty and repression that we see today. It is being used as a weapon to marginalize and control people. We are witnessing the criminalization of race and ethnicity, the criminalization of languages spoken, the criminalization of ideas, even the criminalization of zip codes. And that criminalization is made worse by the criminalization of dissent. Because if we can be silenced on the things that matter, we can be controlled in almost every regard. And people see what is happening, and some say, someone should do something about this. Well, we are the people who are doing something about it. What Professor talked about and what we're witnessing today is cruelty. And at SCHR, we know cruelty. We know cruelty like a man incarcerated in Georgia prison who suffered a stroke and was left on the floor for 3 days before he received medical attention, resulting in life-altering disabilities. We know cruelty like the state of Georgia using junk science to keep an innocent father in prison for the rest of his life. And I can go on and on and on. We know cruelty. And we know how to fight it. We sued the Department of Corrections for their woeful lack of concern for our clients' health and safety. And earlier this year, we secured the second highest damages award ever paid by the Georgia Department of Corrections on behalf of our client who was left to die of a stroke in his cell. Our recent victory just last week in the Georgia Supreme Court for our client who couldn't even mourn the death of his infant son because he was accused wrongfully using junk science of killing him. We recently had a great victory in the Georgia Supreme Court on his behalf. So we know cruelty, but we also know how to tackle it because we have strength like towers. And what we're witnessing today is repression, but SCHR also knows repression. In response to increasing attacks waged by prosecutors and legislators on the right to dissent, the Southern Center created what we call our First Amendment Lawyer Bridge in the summer of 2023. This was shortly before the announcement of the largest criminal racketeering case ever filed against protesters in United States history. The bridge, as we call it, is a formalized lawyer pairing project that provides training and compensation for attorneys who are representing people arrested while exercising their First Amendment rights. And the bridge worked to pair 54 of the 61 individuals named in the Stop Cop City racketeering case with attorneys. And this case was about protesters indiscriminately being targeted for challenging the militarization of policing in Atlanta. And on September 9th, 2025, the court informed attorneys who are working on those cases that a formal order dismissing the racketeering charges against all 61 individuals named in an indictment is forthcoming. And not only is this a big freaking deal, it is a victory for the people who were unlawfully charged, but it's also a victory for the idea that we can stand up against repression and we can win. We can win, y'all. We haven't lost our hope, and we have not lost our power. The things that are intruding and encroaching closer and closer to all of us have been things the Southern Center, as many people have said already, has been facing head on since our founding nearly 50 years ago. Abuse of power by cruel actors hiding behind masks of authority, deprivation of fundamental human rights and dignity, dehumanization and criminalization based on status and vulnerability. All of this is at the core of every battle SCHR has fought. And now, in a world where these horrors are knocking at our doors, our neighbors are being kidnapped, our streets filled with masked intruders operating under the guise of law enforcement, SCHR is a model for all engaged in resisting. As Professor Clarke said, we don't get the choice to retreat. We don't have the privilege of cowering. Imagine what that would mean. Imagine if we cowered, what it would mean. It would mean that all the people who lost their lives to force this country to be its best self would have died in vain. And we will not let that story be written about us. We won't. We must be the generation that will protect the future. We must be the generation that will stand with all our might. I went to some conference somewhere one day, and I got a lot of things out of it, but the one thing I got out of this was this person said to me, when you're feeling overwhelmed, imagine your ancestors holding you up. Imagine them with their hands to your back, pushing you forward. Not just pushing you forward, but soothing you too. Imagine, and so I imagine this. And I imagine my ancestors saying, go on, baby, like they used to do or still do in those black churches where I grew up. I imagine them saying, we got you. I imagine them clapping at every win and holding me close with each loss. Because it's not just my dreams they're pushing forward. It's theirs too. And I wish I could tell you, I honestly wish I could tell you that I have the solution, but I don't. But what I do know is that we are committed enough and we are passionate enough to work together to figure this thing out. As Maya Angelou famously wrote, you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Just like the moons and like the sun, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling. I bear the tide, leaving behind nights of terror and fear. I rise into a daybreak that's wondrously clear. I rise, bridging the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. We rise, and we must rise, and we must rise again. So I say to you tonight what I often say to myself, because I do give myself some positive self-talk. And I tell myself, hold your head up high. You don't need to cower. You don't need to slump down. Hold your head up. Laugh like you have the fountain of youth in your living room. Sing loudly and off key. Dream like a better tomorrow is not just possible, but it's inevitable. And as I take my seat, I ask you to pay attention to the video that will play next. This year marks the 10th year of our Project Freedom, our resentencing project aimed at freeing as many people as we possibly can from the mass incarceration monster. But I want you to take a special note as you look at this video of the dreams that are mentioned by the people in this video. I want you to hear the dreams not just for the project, but for the impact that our work can have. And I want you to commit to helping us achieve those dreams. So I ask you to dig deeper tonight, not for me. Don't do it for me. I want you to do it for us. I want you to do it for the future that we are creating together. SCHR will celebrate our 50th anniversary. Oh, look at me. I almost forgot to recognize Stephen B. Bright. I almost forgot. When I thought about our 50th anniversary, you can't think about 50 years of the Southern Center if you don't think about Stephen Bright. He's the person who saw something in me that I don't know that I saw in myself. And I will be forever grateful to that guy right there. So we're going to do a whole lot of celebrating and having a good time and dancing, because I love to dance. But as we revel in all that we have achieved over time, most importantly, what we will do is we will plot the impact of our future. And you will be a part of the stories that we tell, because tonight you are making that future possible. Thank you all for being here. Not just for being here, but for showing love to us. Some of you for a long, long time, decades. Thank you for being our partner, and thank you for being our friend.